Just pause for a moment. Hi, I'm Dave Corral from New Balance Canada here at the Mississauga, Ontario office for New Balance. And we're here with Lindsey Butterworth of Team New Balance. And Lindsey is joining us from the Greater Vancouver area in British Columbia. And we wanted to share some insights with the virtual Expo speaker series about footwear and what's going on at New Balance and what shoes an elite athlete likes to use for different workouts, and also a few sneak peeks of what's coming out in spring and summer of 2022. So I wanted to give a bit of introduction about Lindsey, and I could probably spend the whole time introducing her accolades because they are many, but the highlights, and she's well traveled on the national team for Canada in track and field. But Lindsey has competed for Canada at both the 2017 World Championships in London, England, and the 2019 World Championships in Doha, Qatar. At both of those events, 800 meters is her event, her specialty. And Lindsey was also the Canadian Olympic Trials champion in the 800 meters this past year for the 2020/2021 Olympic Games and qualified to Tokyo, representing Canada this past July, August. And Lindsey has a personal best of the 2-lap race of 1:59.19, which is a very fast time. It's like a sprint for 2 straight laps of the track. Now, I was asking Lindsey just before, because I know a lot of our viewers are training for the marathon or the half marathon. Perhaps some of you have run even further than the marathon distance. And I wanted to know Lindsey's longest race she's done. So it would be about 5 or 6K in road running and cross country. So the context is we want to share the insights on what kind of footwear a middle distance athlete wears, because that can help share insights for all distances, really. So the first question I wanted to ask Lindsey was, what does she look for in her shoes, and does she use different shoes for different workouts? So we'd love to hear your thoughts on footwear, Lindsey.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And I think we can all talk about shoes for a longer than 15 minutes, but mostly what I look for in a shoe is the cushioning. So that's super important to me in just the comfort level. And I've, over the years, experimented with a lot of different shoes and found that having a lot of cushioning and in a neutral shoe is really important to me. And I've now just stopped experimenting because I found the shoe that works for me best and has worked for me for the last probably 6 or 7 years. And so that is just really important to me, and not too firm or stiff. I think just having a lighter, a little bit more flexible and high cushioning shoe is what works best for me.
And then in addition to a high cushioning shoe, what are some of the other types of shoes for different workouts you like?
Yeah, so I normally will wear the RC Elites. That would be my flats for some like trail workouts, maybe some tempos. Not all of my workouts, but mostly just high quality. If I'm doing a time trial or like a tempo on the trail, or a bit more of a high quality workout on the track, then I'll put that's longer, then I'll put my flats on, and usually that's the RC Elite. And then spikes are obviously a big component to my training, which I wear the MDX spikes for all my training that is very specific on the track. And then for pretty much everything else, I wear the 1080s.
Yeah, and as we were chatting, you were giving some really interesting stats on what percentage you feel your training is for the different shoes. And I think this is really interesting to our viewers. For someone who runs almost a sprint, a 2-lap race, what are the percentages of the different types of shoes you use?
Yeah, so I probably do about 80% of my training in the 1080s, which I was telling you, Dave, earlier that I get made fun of for that because a lot of athletes that I train with, and I think in general, will put their spikes or flats on for pretty much every workout. And I will usually wear my 1080s most of the time, unless it's a really important or specific workout. And then probably about 5% of the time I'll wear the RC Elite or some other type of flat. I've worn the Rebel in the past occasionally, but I don't wear flats too often. But again, usually around this time of year when we're not on the track much and if we're doing like a tempo or like sometimes we do a 5K or 6K time trial, then I'll wear my flats. And then my spikes are probably the other 15% of the time. So again, with those more important track workouts in the spring and summer, we're pretty much always in spikes for those ones.
Right. I think it's interesting for our viewers that it's not that maybe you use the same shoe all the time for everything and then just go racing, that sometimes there's benefit of different drops and different thicknesses of stack heights for different types of training, and probably many of the viewers are doing long runs and maybe intervals or shorter workouts and mixing it up. So there's benefit to that. I was also curious, you would work out in the gym, and probably a lot of our viewers might also do some supplementary gym exercises. Is there any kind of special footwear you wear for the gym or not really?
I think that I'm not lifting enough weight to be able to wear a weightlifting shoe. I think I would get laughed out of the gym as like a middle distance runner trying to lift my lighter weight with these stick arms. But yeah, I usually just wear my 1080s in the gym. I supplement a lot of my training with cross training. So on the elliptical, and then we do weights as well. So I just stay in my 1080s. Sometimes I'll put on some TCs, but other than that, it's mostly 1080s. And the TCs are usually more just like, because I haven't really worn them outside much, they're just more of an indoor shoe for me.
That's great to know. The 1080 is so versatile. that is a focus shoe at New Balance. Also wanted to ask about carbon plated shoes in general, which has very much, I would say in the last 4 years, been very much a part of road running. And then in track, a little more recent, over the last 2+ years, maybe in Doha World Championships, it was really starting to become a thing. And do you see benefit in carbon plated shoes? Do they help you perform? Do they maybe help prevent injury? You mentioned training in the RC Elite, but what's your opinion as an elite athlete, an Olympian, on the carbon plated shoes?
Yeah, I definitely notice a difference for sure. The first time I wore carbon plated shoes was, I think it was a prototype of the MDX in Doha. So I got given a pair and I felt a difference right away. And then from then wearing the RC Elites for my track workouts, it's like there isn't much of a difference between my flats and spikes in that sense, which isn't usually the case when you go from flats to spikes. Usually you put your flats on, you do a couple reps, and then you put your spikes on and you're like, wow, I feel so much faster and I'm like on my toes, and it's just a completely different feeling. But I've definitely found with the RC Elites that there isn't as much of a gap there in when I put my flats on to maybe do a couple reps on the track and then put my spikes on. It feels like they are almost the same as my spikes, which is a really good feeling because you just feel faster and lighter and more efficient. And even some of my training partners that have tried them on, they're like, wow, this is so different than the flats that they're wearing. And it definitely is a very positive difference I've noticed.
You raise an interesting point about the specificity. So for those that are doing road races, that there are plated shoes that are for racing, and there's now some plated shoes for training. Like you mentioned, the Fuel Cell TC would be an example, and the RC Elite, and how they work together. So it's interesting that perhaps someone could train in, say, the TC, and then race in the RC Elite, and then still get that kind of motor skill turnover, that same pattern.
Yeah, for sure. And definitely with COVID and not knowing when races were coming up and having longer training blocks without races kind of to break that up, I supplemented my training with flats more often than spikes just to prevent injury, because I was doing more volume on the track. And it's really good to see that I can get the same quality of my workouts with the flats as I do with my spikes, but I feel way more secure and definitely more support and cushioning in the flats. And I just feel like I'm preventing injury to my feet, and it's not as harsh and like thin as wearing spikes all the time.
Yeah, no, well said. It makes sense. You can train more, faster, and less risk, which is a good thing. We were going to share a few sneak peeks now for spring 22. So some of these have barely been shown on social media, on the protos of the grams out there. And some of these models, Lindsey has worn previous versions of them. So we wanted to ask her kind of where she uses them. And the first I wanted to show was the 1080. And just a bit about this shoe. This is the 1080 version 12. It will come out estimated in May of 2022. And how the shoe has evolved is, well, certainly there's a full outsole coverage for durability in the shoe. It's still a Fresh Foam X soft, resilient, mileage-friendly midsole. And it's gone to a traditional heel counter. So that's one change, where there's more structure now in the heel. Is called a rolled mesh in the heel. There's that Achilles flare. And in general, the fit around the rear foot will be a bit more secure than the thinner heel that is in the current 1080. And this will retail for $200 in spring of 22. So we know, Lindsey, you're using about 80% for the 1080. This is a shoe we can't mess up because you use it so much, but does it look good? Does it look like something you could wear for 80% of your training next year?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it looks, I can definitely notice the thickness in the heel already just from there, which will be good to try. And yeah, you can't really go wrong with that shoe. And I don't think you could ever mess it up with its foundation.
Good. Excellent. Well, that's a sneak peek. Another sneak peek, and you said you use this for some of your training, is the RC Elite. Just to share with our viewers, this is a new color for next spring in this mango color, but otherwise it's just a color up. It still has a full-length carbon plate that's called out in the outsole. It is called a Pebax autoclave foam, or we call it fuel cell foam. It's an 8mm drop on a 35mm heel height. And this shoe, certainly seamless, breathable upper. This shoe is positioned as the New Balance World Athletics compliant marathon shoe. It's under the 40mm height regulation for road shoes, but this is a new color. And just remind us, Lindsey, what you use the RC Elite for, and this will just be a new color, so it'll definitely be good for the Instagram photos next spring.
Oh yeah, for sure. I'm excited. I usually will wear them if we do any, like sometimes we'll do some 5K or 6K time trials on the road, or some longer stuff, longer for me, on the trails. And then I do a bit of track work in these too. So I'm really excited for that bouncy feeling that you get from these, which is always super fast.
Excellent. And just for the viewers, the update to the RC Elite, the version 3, is scheduled for fall of 2022. The name at the time is planned to change to Super Comp Elite instead of RC Elite. So that is just one evolution that will happen in fall of 22. Two more to show. One is the update to the Fuel Cell Rebel. And this is the Fuel Cell Rebel version 3. It's scheduled to launch in July of 2022. And this shoe has been an interesting one with the current version too, in that it's very much like the RC Elite shoe minus the carbon plate. It's the same foam. It's the autoclave Pebax foam. The Rebel is a 6mm drop on the shoe. It's on what's called a Vaz-E last, which is a last that we used to have on previous models of shoes, but has more toe spring in the forefoot. And this shoe will retail for $180 Canadian next summer. But otherwise, this fit is a little bit more narrow than some of the other shoes like the 1080. And I know, Lindsey, you mentioned you've used the Rebel in the past, and maybe next year you'll try this one, but what kind of workouts might you use the Rebel for?
Yeah, in the past, I've done some track work in the Rebels as well. So pretty much if I'm maybe doing a bit of a longer interval on the track, or I don't want to put my spikes on quite yet, then I've used the Rebel before.
Yeah, really the goal of this one is a lot of energy return, which is characteristic of the fuel cell shoes, that they're more responsive, a lot of give back, and that's a goal with the Rebel. The V2 has been quite popular, and the V3 doesn't change too much. And then one more to show, and this is an interesting one. We also looked at it with Chris Balestrini in the previous video, and this is called the Super Comp Pacer. And what we're seeing is that not all the carbon plated shoes are big and thick for marathon, is that into the new year, there will be some options. This shoe has a full length carbon plate. There are some lower stack height shoes. And this is very much like the popular New Balance 1400, but with a carbon plate and with a Pebax foam, a variety of fuel cell foam, which is a 2-layer foam in the case of the Super Comp Pacer. This is a 10mm drop for those that have enjoyed the 1400 being that offset, and it's on the NBJ or New Balance Japan Last, so it does fit quite narrow and close to foot hugging. And I think a lot of our runners, or athletes as well, who train on the track and do middle distance might quite enjoy this shoe, but what are your first impressions on the Super Comp Pacer?
I'm very excited to try these because I wore the 1400s all through university, and I kind of got away from them in the last few years recently, but I'm really excited to try these to kind of mix the best of both worlds of everything that I love. So I can definitely see myself doing some maybe 5K road races or some workouts on the track in these.
Yeah, I think the comparison, just for the viewers, one is a thick stack height, one is thinner, both are carbon plated, and that's kind of the way of the future for different options in the plated footwear. Well, thanks for sharing those insights. Can't wait for you to try some of those shoes next year, as well as you're training for the 2022 World Championships in Eugene, Oregon, also on the West Coast. But I want to thank all our viewers for watching. We want to wish you the very best from New Balance, as well as Canada Running Series and Running Room in your virtual races. If you are doing the 5K or 10K or half or marathon in the month of October, some of you are doing the in-person 10K this weekend. It is also the Canadian Championships, which we'll be watching with interest to see how everyone does. But as racing is coming back, it's fun. We get to talk about shoes and talk about running. And definitely the new year will bring a lot more events as we go forward. So thanks, everyone. Good luck with your events. And thank you also to Lindsey for joining us and sharing your insights.
Thanks so much for having me, and good luck in all your races.
Thanks.